It's Dee Dee on the spot.
Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to my guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone to please like and subscribe down below if you enjoy this content. We greatly appreciate it. We have Kyler Zachman from Hailing Andromeda. They're a band based out of Minnesota, my home state as well. Kyler, how you doing?
Very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory? What got you into music? What inspires you? And what you guys are up to currently?
So, what got me into music, I guess, starting from the beginning? Growing up, I always listened to Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, just kind of the classic rock greats, more or less. Um, I pretty much listen to everything, though, as far as musical preferences go. I can usually find something from just about any genre that I can connect to. But it's the one band that probably specifically got me into being a little bit more adamant about what I'm listening to was definitely AFI. I
Hmm.
don't know if you're familiar with them, but they were one of the first bands that like I got their full CD, December Underground, if that matters to anyone. Um, but yeah, that really kicked it off for me, and I was like, wow, like this is something that I really want to try to do.
Is was there a specific song that really got to you when you listened to the song? You're like, oh my god, this sounds awesome. I want to do this. Was there that, or was it just the overall music?
I think it was just the overall music for those guys, at
Mhm.
least. They're a very very different style from anything that I play. It's very very different from any of the music that I write. But the I know the one song that got me into them was Miss Murder, which is probably like half of their fan base. What got them into their
Oh my
music?
god, yeah, I didn't know who you were talking about first. But then when you mentioned that, I was like, oh yeah, that was on Guitar Hero. I remember that. Yeah, that's a
I
good song.
I actually never had Guitar Hero or anything like that
Yeah.
growing up. So like I feel like there are a lot of bands like that that I probably would have discovered a lot earlier
Mm-hmm.
had I actually played those
Yeah,
games.
absolutely. So did you take any like vocalist lessons? Did you do anything like that when you were growing up, or did you just all of a sudden one day decide, hey, I just want to start singing?
No, yeah, I never took any lessons ever actually, up even to this day. I growing up like I always like pretended when I was a little kid. I would like there's some videos of me that my mom took where I was like standing on some chair when I was like 5 years old, pretending it was a stage and just like pretending to belt it out. But I never started actually singing until I guess like I started just singing to myself in my car when I was probably 15, 16 years old type of thing. But I want to say I was about 15 or 16 as well when I started to scream or learn how to scream and stuff, and I would just scream along to like Suicide Silence, old Bring Me the Horizon, um, Whitechapel,
Mm-hmm.
just that's the kind of like metal stuff that really got me into doing vocals specifically. So I would just pretty much try to imitate what they were doing more or less, and kind of figured it out along the way.
We've had screamers on the show before. How does that work with your voice? I mean, how long do you usually have to recuperate after a show or after even recording that? Because that must do a lot of damage on your vocal cords.
So the funny thing about that is, as long as I'm doing it right, it doesn't really affect my voice at all. But I the key to that is specifically after playing shows and stuff. It's when you're playing a show, it's so easy to just get caught up in the moment and not do it right because you're so excited and your blood's pumping and you're just like doing it, and then you'll start to feel a little tingle in your throat type of thing, and it's like, oh shit, gotta make sure I'm keeping that in mind and not destroying my voice. But when I first started, it was really tough, like trying to do it in a way that didn't hurt my voice, so I could actually do it for more than 5 minutes straight
Yeah.
type of thing. But yeah, it's with the where I'm at now and stuff. As long as I can keep my composure and stuff when I'm on stage, and I don't get too overly into it, I can pretty much do it for hours without feeling any sort of strain on my voice, which like I said, it definitely wasn't always that way. I used to fuck up my voice pretty bad. I'm sorry, I should ask. Can I? Is it
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We're not monetized by YouTube yet or anything like that, so that monetization is going to be coming in probably like a month or two, I figure. So, Hailing Andromeda, how did that band come to be?
So that's a little bit of a lengthy story. I'll try to make it as brief as possible. I want to say it was 2014. I had gotten together. I had a buddy of mine that I went to high school with, and his older brother had this band that they were trying to get together, and my buddy was playing drums at the time, and he's like, why don't you try out for bass? He's like, I know you've been wanting to try to get in a band and stuff, and it's like, yeah, like I would, but I don't really want to play bass. And they're like, well, you can do like backing vocals and this and that. And then after a few months of trying out with that, and I ended up getting along with all the guys really well. After a few months of that, it ended up turning from me playing bass and doing backing vocals into a dual vocal group, where we had two just flat out regular vocalists.
Yeah.
And from there, it was a couple years of playing way too many local shows and stuff like that, and never releasing any music. But we just kept rolling with it like that, and then we got to the point where we were talking about starting to tour and this and that, and then more or less the other guys in the group just decided they didn't quite have the same vision for the future that me and the bass player at the time had, and so it was at that point just me and the bass player, and who started off as the guitarist, um, and we eventually found our current drummer Trey Corti. Um, I should say first we got our guitarist Lucas Minstead he was in a band called Karma Sutra. They're still playing. Um, got him on guitar. Then we found Trey Corti on drums, and then Trey was friends with our other guitarist Brian Williams. So it just kind of it was a very long process getting the group that we have now, and now our bass player that we had started forming this newer group with. He's not in the band anymore. He ended up moving to South Dakota randomly and was like, I've got shit to do. So it ended up not working out for him to stay in the group. So now it's just myself, Lucas.
What, did he go work in the oil fields or what?
No, he started a meat processing business.
Oh, wow.
So he was living in South Dakota, and he started a meat processing business in Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, but now he's back, and he's just kind of chilling, and we're just trying to more or less find time for him to hang out with all of us and get back in touch with him more or less. But we're working on finding an actual permanent bass player at the moment. We've got one guy that we're trying out right now, and it's going really well so far. So hopefully he'll be a permanent member in the group soon. But yeah, I want to say it's been about a little over a year, not quite a year and a half, maybe getting close to that year and a half point since we actually got the group that we have now. So it's essentially just a different band than it started out to be. Just we kept the same name because right before all the shit went down with the old group, I had bought like 250 t-shirts that said Hailing Andromeda on them, and I was the only one that put any significant money down. So I was like, well, I think as long as everybody's cool with it, I'm just gonna keep the name and like roll with it from there. So we are, like I said, we're essentially just a different band than we started out as with just the same name. but it's musically it's very different than it started out as. The same I guess backbone is there. We've always really strived for um, I guess a lot of diversity within the subgenre of metal or subgenres of metal. Um, we like to throw some melodic stuff in there. We like to throw some like genty stuff, uh, just like deathcore. We really like to touch base on a lot of different subgenres, and beyond that, I guess like the first song on our album is probably not considered metal at all, like or the first song on our upcoming album. It's like there's a tiny little bit of screaming in it, but it's mostly clean singing, a lot of melodies and stuff like that. It's a very kind of all over the place sort of sound, but we've always been striving to kind of create that mesh between all these different subgenres in metal, just to more
What
or less.
about the screaming really appeals to you? I mean, it's because it's a different way of music. So what about that kind of appealed to you when you were starting out?
You know, it was kind of a cop out for me
Mm-hmm.
when I started out. I always wanted to sing, but I was never in choir or anything like that, and I started listening to more and more metal. And like I said, when I was about 16 years old, I was like hearing these metal bands, and I was like, well, I can't sing, so maybe I can try this. And yeah, I just kept working on it and working on it, and for whatever reason, I felt a lot less self conscious about screaming than I did singing, and just took off from it from there.
So how did the name Hailing Andromeda come to be? Is there a story behind that, or was it just something that you thought was cool?
There's not a really good story behind how we came up with the name. I guess it was just kind of like one person it was from the old group, obviously. One person thought of one part of it, and it was like, well, what if we do something like this? And then the other somebody else was like, well, maybe we do this, and then we just kind of combined from a couple different ideas that we had. But the the meaning, I guess, behind the name is it refers to the Andromeda galaxy being the closest galaxy to the Milky Way, um, and that sometime in the next, like I want to say, they say it's sometime in the next like 6 million years or
Mm-hmm.
something, the Andromeda galaxy is supposed to collide with the Milky Way and
Mm-hmm.
essentially destroy the world as we know. So it's kind of like a play on like just kind of accepting what's to come and rolling with the punches as you take them type of thing.
Now, I do love the band title, but do you use also kind of the astrology, astronomy themes in your lyrics, or are you mainly just what are your lyrics like theme wise? What would you consider yourself to mainly be?
Um, it's kind of the same thing as the instrumentation goes. It's kind of all over the place. There's on the first song that we have released as a single is there aren't any like astrology references or anything in the lyrics, at least not very much. Um, but the first song single that we have released is more or less about like saying like fuck the bullshit in the world and kind of just accepting the way that the world is more or less. And I feel like a lot of our lyrics tend to err on the more positive side of things, and we try to keep the lyrics a little bit more uplifting and or inspiring in a way, and just kind of trying to encourage myself more than anybody, but I guess anybody that's listening as well, just trying to encourage people to be their best self more or less.
So when it comes to lyrics, how do you come up with a lot of your lyrics? Are you more of a person that like has day-to-day interactions where you're just randomly thinking about stuff and then you go, "Oh my god, that's a great lyric. I got to write that down." Or I've always wanted to ask and someone to say yes to this, but we haven't had a yes yet. There's always that theme in movies where the lead singer, anyone who writes the lyrics has a dream where then they dream up the perfect song lyric and then they're like, "Oh my god," they wake up and then they write the perfect song and they become the greatest band in the world or whatever. Have you ever had a dream like that where you've used dreams in your lyrics?
I've never had a specific lyric or line come to me in a dream that I like woke up and I was like, I need to write this down right now. But I definitely draw from I've had a lot of problems, I guess, in the last couple of years with just kind of trying to avoid my subconscious, and I would do pretty much anything to make myself not remember the dreams that I was having. But you know, even doing that, I, um, you eventually end up they eventually end up bleeding through anyways, and you end up dealing with it regardless. So there's one song that we have on the new album that there's a reference to it's pretty stereotypical. It's about like getting over an ex-girlfriend more or less, or an ex-significant other, and there I kind of referenced that how it was kind of something that had been haunting my dreams, and just trying to get over that more or less. So I guess I've never had a specific line come from the dreams, but I definitely use my dreams and I guess my subconscious in general to influence what I.
Did you pull a Taylor Swift and like list her by name and go like specifically into everything?
No. I that song it's very, very cryptic. It's I wrote it to have. I wrote it so the person listening would be able to think of it in so many different ways depending on what they're going through, and there are definitely times where I want to be that specific and like call out specific things, and we have one song that's basically just like a fuck you song to like the guitarist Brian and myself both went through a very, very similar situation with our previous relationships, so we definitely had that kind of connection there. So he the song is called Eternum Valet, and Brian wrote the entire song when he was in a different band instrumentally, and it had like a different name and different lyrics at the time, but he brought it to the group and he was like, this is what it's about, this is the feel that I'm going for. And I was like, dude, like I get that, like I feel that. So we ended up pretty much writing it like half and half as far as the lyrics go, and that's probably the most direct song that we have on the upcoming album, where it's basically just a big fuck you to people that did you wrong type of thing.
Yeah. And that's, you know, it's a great way of sort of therapy too, kind of letting out all those emotions lyrically. I find that of all the bands that I talk to, a lot of them use that kind of as their outlet. Do you find that you guys are similar in that way?
Definitely. Like I was saying, the one song Eternum Valet was very therapeutic, I think, for myself and Brian to get off our chest, and it's so much fun to play it live, and we just feel that energy, and it obviously all four of us have a really, really good connection, but for like that song specifically, it's like I feel like that song is like me and Brian's baby, like that's the song that we were both going through like the same thing almost at the same time. So that's definitely the one really, I think, therapeutic song that we both had. And I think it's the second song on our upcoming EP. I wrote, I think I want to say I wrote that one lyrically all by myself, and that's probably the most meaningful lyrical song that we have in just for myself specifically. Um, so we still don't have an official title for that one. Working title that we're using right now is Dick's Blazin'. We will come up with an actual name for it eventually, but that's the more cryptic song that I was talking about a little bit earlier, where it's it's definitely about something very specific in my life, but and it writing it really helped me get through that.
Mhm.
But I wrote it in a way that somebody else listening to it might be able to get something completely different out of it.
Mhm.
And I always kind of feel like I go back and forth on that line with how cryptic I want to be, because I want people to be able to understand what I mean, like for myself behind it, but I also want people to be able to get their own meaning out of it, you know?
Mhm. Absolutely. So we love to hear first concert stories or first live shows that you guys performed at as a band. Where did you guys perform and how did it go?
So the first, I'll say the first show that we played with the current lineup that we have
Mhm.
right now, it was at, I don't know if you're familiar with a place called Wasco's Campground
Yeah,
in
yeah.
northern Wisconsin.
Mhm.
Northern Wisconsin Metal Fest.
Oh,
That
wow.
that was the first show that we played with this lineup, and I want to say it was like a month or two after, I think it was a month after Brian had joined the band. So
Wow.
we had, I think, I'm pretty sure we only played 4 songs, and they were all pretty rough, but it was so much fun, and like it was definitely our most rough show that we played, and I guess I can't hold it against ourselves too bad considering the amount of time we had preparing for it.
Well, it's always good also to get the bad stuff out of the way in the beginning, so that there's only one way that you guys can go, and that's up. And our one of the big things that we like to talk about here is performing live. It's a question that I ask every musical guest that we have on here. It's always been described kind of as like a drug, unlike any other. And you being the lead singer probably have a more special approach to it because a lot of people are focusing on you when you guys are performing your songs. But what does performing live mean to you specifically?
Oh gosh, I don't even know a good way to put it into words, to be honest. I like you said, it's like it's a feeling like nothing else. It's so much fun. There's always so much energy, and it's a just such a I'm trying to think of the word. I wanted to say inspiring, but it's exhilarating. It's just such a good feeling knowing that you're going out there and showing people this. While you're only playing a 30-minute or so set, it's so much time leading up and so much time and work leading up to that moment, and it just feels so good. It's like that moment of relief, like yes, like this is happening, we're doing this, and people are hopefully enjoying it.
Do you find that time stands still when you're on stage, or does it seem to go by quickly?
It a little bit of both,
Mm.
honestly. I feel like when it's in the middle of a song, in the middle of a song, and as far as the overall set goes, I feel like it just goes by like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like I blink my eyes and it's over. But when you're up there in the moment, when you're between songs, and especially for me, like I'm naturally such an introverted person, but for whatever reason, when I'm up on stage, I feel like a totally different person, and it allows me to kind of get a little bit of that expression out between songs too, where we can talk about what's going on, what a song is about, type of thing. But those in between song bits are, I feel like it just takes forever. Like I'll be sitting there, like I feel like I'm talking for like hours on end pretty much, and then we'll like listen back. I try to record as many of
Mhm.
our sets as I can, just so I can look back on it for myself and see where I want to improve on and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But I'll go back and I'll be like, damn, like I was kind of rushing that. Like we kind of rushed between songs there. I felt like it was taking forever in the moment, but
Yeah. I totally get that feeling because I mean, I've never performed live on stage, but I've done plenty of things in front of a lot of people where you just always are second guessing and questioning yourself. How do you deal with that mentally and emotionally, knowing that you are going to screw up every once in a while, and it's not going to be perfect. Do you always prepare yourself for that, or do you just kind of go with the flow?
I just try to go with the flow as much as possible. And like you said, I go into it like with that mindset, like, well, something is probably gonna be stupid. Like I'm probably gonna say something really dumb on accident, and I'll just have to brush it under the rug. But at the end of the day, I feel like I don't mean this to make myself sound like a dick, but like watching other bands,
Mm-hmm.
other local bands and stuff, like either before or after my set, like I'll be like, oh, they definitely probably are regretting saying that.
Yeah.
Like, in that sick, twisted way, it makes me feel better about myself. I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one making myself a little funny on stage.
So, do you and your band have any rituals or traditions that you guys like to do before you go on stage? We've had bands on here that say that they, you know, have a shot or they drink a few beers or they all stretch or whatever. Do you guys have a tradition or do you wing it?
Um, we we're kind of in the process of figuring that out. I think right
Mm-hmm.
now, um, we most of the guys definitely like to have a few drinks before they play, but we're just I feel like we're all trying to kind of find that balance of
Mm-hmm.
you obviously you don't want to be sloppy drunk when you play because you want to be able to play all the technical stuff really well and just be able to hold up your end of that bargain, but at the same time, you know, having a little bit of a drink or a little bit of a smoke or something like
Mm-hmm.
that definitely can help calm the nerves before we go on and stuff. And I typically don't drink very much alcohol in general,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I feel like we're all just kind of like I was saying, I feel like we're all just trying to figure it out at this moment. We There are some times where we probably drink a little bit too much before we play or smoke a little bit too much or something like that, but at the end of the day I feel like we just try to not think about it
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible and just go with the flow. And
Is there a point you think when you guys are drinking that like some people comment that when they get a little drunk they can actually play maybe a little bit better and then when they get a certain amount of drunk then they start to really go downhill? Is that, have you found that for you guys, or do you found that any alcohol affects your performance?
I think that's very true in the sense that I think at least for most of us, a little bit of alcohol, like I was saying, it's just like having enough to calm your
Yeah, the
nerves.
liquid courage and everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, exactly. But the key that we're trying to, or the balance that some of us are trying to find is making sure we don't go
Mm-hmm.
overboard with that,
Yeah.
because I mean, I don't know if you've heard many stories about Wasco's or Northern Wisconsin Metal Fest, but it's like a campground. They have a bar on
Well, it's
site.
Wisconsin, so you know.
Yeah, everybody just gets sloppy drunk. And like we, when we played that first show afterwards, we were all kind of like, okay, we got to chill a little bit on before we play because that was rough. But yeah, I definitely think there's truth to that. Having that little bit of liquid courage can definitely help things go a little bit more smooth. But yeah, it's just about making sure you don't cross that line, I
Yeah.
think.
So what do you mainly do after a show? Because like me, when I'm done with these podcasts, I usually don't like to talk to anyone for a while. I just like to get something to eat, just relax and chill for like half an hour and just collect my thoughts. What's that like for you? Because I mean, you're on stage and you're working your tail off. Do you kind of like to isolate yourself, or do you like to immediately go and mingle with people?
I I was right when you brought this question up, I was immediately gonna say I like to isolate myself,
Mm-hmm.
but thinking on to how things actually tend to go,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I end up talking to people nonstop after we play. Like it'll start with some random person will come up on stage and help us tear down drums and do the regular, good set man
Mm-hmm.
type of thing, and a lot of the time goes from that into just like these little conversations where I'll be like, oh shit, like sorry, I just realized like I've been neglecting all of the stuff that I need to get taken off stage because I'm too busy talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like after I wind down a little bit, after like that high kind of subsides a little bit after I've talked to some people, I definitely like to isolate myself and smoke a little bit to myself and just kind of take it easy more or less. And I guess beyond that, just getting together with the other guys in the band and telling those guys that they did a good job, and just kind of I guess concluding the show by just kind of getting together and being like, that was fun, more or
Yeah.
less.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have an album that you guys are planning on or that you guys are currently working on. What's the progress on that?
Oh gosh, it's been such a long process. It's been such a slow process, and it's mostly our fault just because we took a really long time to decide how exactly we wanted to do everything. Like I we I don't know if you're familiar, if you've heard of the band, the Atlantis Theorem.
Oh, yeah.
They're,
Yep.
they're I think they're considered like alternative rock
Mhm.
metal almost. Like
Yeah.
they used to be metalcore, but anyways, their bass player is the guy that we ended up deciding to go through for almost everything on our upcoming album. And it was a really long process. Like right away we wanted him to record drums for us, to do live drums, and got the drums tracked. And then it was probably like 3 or 4 months after we got the drums done before we even booked time to record guitars.
Mhm.
So we were just kind of taking our time with it, and more or less making sure we were gonna be happy with the decision that we made on who we decided to go through to get it done for us and stuff. But yeah, and like I said, I wish I could tell you. I can't even remember what month it was when we finished drum tracking. But like I said, this last Saturday, I want to say it was like the second to last Saturday in August. Um, we got all the drums, or all the guitars done. Just gotta get bass tracked with Sam as well on. I want to say we're doing it the second weekend of September coming up here.
Mhm.
And then we're going through a gentleman named on Facebook. His name is Derek Tidwip Paprika. If
Jeez,
you're
that's a
familiar
great
with
name.
him. He has a band called Inflict. It's basically a solo project for him. He writes everything,
Mhm.
and I don't know for sure if he's looking for performing members or not, but he did some of the work for he did all of the work for our first single that we released. And he's going to be doing vocal tracking for us once we get bass done and we can actually set a solid time to get vocals done. But yeah, it's just been a really long and slow process, but I can't say I'd have it any other way, because we were very adamant that we wanted to make sure that this was a release that we were going to be really proud of when it got done, and we wanted to just get something that we can, listen to ourselves and jam along to it, not rather than, I feel like there's so many, and like with all of the old Hailing demos that we had and stuff with the old group, it was like at the time when we're recording it, it was like, yeah, this is awesome. And then the final product comes back and we're like, yeah, it's just missing something or something like that. There was always something missing from it. So we just really wanted to make sure with this release we would get done with it and be really happy with it when we got the final product back. And I'm definitely very very excited to hear it when we get it back, because I mean even the rough mixes for the instrumentation stuff without bass, even like we were sitting there listening to it like, fuck yeah, this sounds good. Like
So,
can't
so do you
wait.
guys have a title yet already for the album, or is that still a work in progress?
That's still a work in progress too. We're kind of slacking on all of that stuff. Like we're very indecisive, I think,
Mhm.
when it comes to making important decisions like that. Like I know we had a working title that we were talking about using for the EP, and then we ended up changing a few things around, just so I don't think we're gonna end up sticking with that anymore. But yeah, we've just been very indecisive, I think, it would be a good word to use when it comes to that stuff, because yeah, we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it after practice and stuff for a couple minutes. Be like, yeah, like this is a good idea or this is a good idea, and then we end up just coming up with 10 other ideas afterwards that we're like, yeah, but this could work too, and
Yeah.
like, what about this?
Do you plan on hiring someone to do the artwork for it, or is that something that you guys are going to do yourselves?
I think we're gonna be doing it ourselves. Actually, we were talking about there are a couple quote unquote local
Mm.
artists that some of them are more local than others, I guess. But a couple guys that we really like their artwork and stuff. But um, I think at the end of the day we are gonna end up doing it ourselves. Our drummer Trey he's really into photography and photo editing and stuff like that. So, and I know he's had a few images that he's been working on over the course of like the last 6 months, just doing little tweaking here and there when he has time. I'm pretty sure we're gonna end up using something that he comes up with. And I know beyond the album artwork, we're planning at least on doing a visual what's the word uh, visual aid
Mm.
for every song on the album. So it's a 5 song EP, and we're thinking we're just gonna kind of label all of the videos that we make for them as like visual aids or something like that. We're not gonna call any of them music videos or lyric videos or anything like that, but we want to make a visual representation to go along with each song, and for that I know we're gonna do all of that on our own, and
Mm.
just between myself and Trey doing video editing and videography and stuff like that. We've been talking about the visual aspect of the album for a long time now, and that's definitely something that we're working hard and figuring out. But at the moment, we've been focusing a little bit more on the recording process, rightfully so, I would think.
All right, so now before we get to our most important, or our most popular part of the podcast, the 5 questions, I gotta say, you're the third person on here who has had those type of earrings. How did you get those, and did they? How badly do those things hurt when you have them on? It's like, geez, or do you get used to them after a while?
You know, I when you're in the process of stretching them up, it definitely
Yeah.
can be painful. I did it when I was I pierced my ears when I was a freshman in high school, and I want to say it was very shortly after that probably way too soon after that I started to stretch them.
Mm.
And when I first started doing it, I did it in like literally the dumbest way that a person could possibly do it. Like I just basically shoved these huge earrings through my ear and like ripped the shit out of my earlobes pretty much.
Yeah.
But I can at least say they're not ripped
Mm-hmm.
through, and they're at least fairly healthy
Yeah.
now. I've taken really good care of them over the last couple years, and since I've started taking good care of them, they really don't have any real issues.
Yeah.
One thing though that it gets a little irritating is I'll like fall asleep with them in. I
Mm-hmm.
try to take them out when I go to sleep, and like if I lay on them, they're big enough where it'll like kind of press weird, and like I've woken up and they've been really sore from sleeping on them and stuff. But usually, other than that, it's nothing too bad at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say because it's one of those things where is it different though when you maybe like when you go outside if it's like windy or when it's cold, just like the holes that you have, the kind of the air coming in, does it feel different?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to say it's been like at least the last 2 winters, maybe even 3 winters. I've taken them out and let them almost or not. They won't close
Mm-hmm.
with the size they're at, but I'll take them out and let them shrink over the winter, just because the cold is really hard on them
Yeah.
for me at least, especially when you like the ones I have in now are metal. So if I'm outside and
Yep.
I snowboard and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that, so I'm outside in the winter a lot, and like it definitely gets a little irritating when they're getting that cold and
Yeah.
stuff. So I tend to take them out a lot of the time in the winter. But yeah, like in the winter with the cold, they can definitely get sensitive and stuff like that, just from the overall temperature. The wind, not so much, but yeah, just being out for a couple hours at a time, snowboarding definitely gets the best of them.
So now we go to our most important and popular part of the podcast, the 5 questionnaires towards the end here. And the first question is, out of all the songs that have ever been written in the history of music, what is one song that you personally wish you'd come up with yourself, and why?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Um, One song that I wish I had written. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if I can really say I wish I had written this, and I can't even narrow it down to one particular song, but I'll narrow it down to an album.
Mm-hmm.
It's an album by the band, or a band called The Elijah, and the album is called I Loved, I Hated, I Destroyed, I Created, and that is one of the most meaningful albums to me, and it's an album that I'll sit and read along to the lyrics as I'm listening to it, and I feel almost like I did write it.
Yeah.
I connect with the lyrics on such an intimate level with that whole album. I can't necessarily say I wish I had written it, but it's something that makes me, when I listen to it, it feels like it's a part of me as I listen to it.
So now our second question, out of all the artists that have ever lived, dead or alive, you can choose either one. If you could perform live for one show with any artist, who would it be and why?
Oh gosh, question. Is it me performing on stage at the same time with this artist?
Yeah, with them, yeah.
Okay. Oh gosh. I would probably have to say Justin Lowe from After the Burial.
Yeah.
He was one of my biggest influences as far as the modern metal sound goes. Like he's like the pinnacle of modern metal in my eyes.
Yeah.
So I would definitely have to say Justin Lowe from After the Burial.
So for our third question, out of all the venues on the planet, if you could perform at any venue, where would you go?
Oh gosh. I mean, I don't know if this would really be considered like a great venue anymore. Like, I haven't heard of a lot of shows from this venue in like a long time. I'm sure it's still a big name, but the Viper Room.
Oh.
I haven't heard of very much stuff going on there. Not that I've looked into it a whole lot, considering I don't live anywhere near there. But yeah, the Viper Room has always been one that I heard about as a kid and stuff. Like, before I ever really even started playing music, it was like, yeah, the Viper Room. That's supposed to be like a big venue or something,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So now we get down to the real nitty-gritty. This is where we find the real truth. Guilty pleasure song. What is a guilty pleasure song that you enjoy that most people would never guess that you like?
Well, I just posted this one on Facebook not too long ago, so I don't know. Some people might already guess this from me, but Karma Chameleon by Culture Club.
Yeah.
I love 80s pop music. I love 80s pop.
Absolutely, me too. So now, lastly, guilty pleasure genre.
Oh, I guess I think I would have to say, like, I don't know exactly what this genre would be considered, but like the kind of like super auto-tuned singing with electronic music.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
This is gonna probably make some people cringe, but there's an artist called Nikasaur. He does that kind of stuff. It's like super overly auto-tuned vocals, super like upbeat techno kind of instrumentation behind it. A lot of people would probably want to punch me for listening to it, but I absolutely love it.
That's great. So now, where can people find you? I know you said before we did the podcast that you have one song on Spotify. You guys have a band Facebook page. Where else could people contact you if they were interested?
If for people to contact us, oh gosh, I feel like I should maybe check this to be sure, but I'm pretty sure our band email is just hailing underscore Andromeda at gmail.com. If anybody wanted to email us, I believe that's our email. If it's wrong, if I got that wrong, it should be on our Facebook page.
Well, I'll leave a link down below for everything too. So,
Awesome.
I mean, it was great having you on. We really appreciate it. And again, everyone, Hailing Andromeda, definitely check these guys out. When you release that album, definitely let us know, and then we'll plug it on here, and we'll guide everyone to it. I mean, we wish you guys nothing but the best of success. And I have two final questions that I like to ask towards the end before I cut her off. Now, if someone were to come up to you on the street and say, "Hey, I'm forming a band. Do you have any tips as how to become successful?" What would be the best piece of advice that you would give that person to be a success?
Best piece of advice I can give is find people that you like spending time with.
Yep.
That's the most important thing in my opinion, because I mean, there are some of the best musicians that you can find. You end up getting together with them and it just doesn't click, and even if it does click, and there are bands that I see that they'll pop up out of nowhere and they'll have all these songs released right away, and then they seem to disappear into the woodwork as fast as they popped up. And I feel like the biggest thing with finding success in that is just finding a group that you won't lose contact with, and finding a group that you can really mesh well with, so it does last as long as it possibly can, rather than being such a short-lived experience.
Absolutely. And then lastly, if you could go back maybe 5 years and talk to your former self, what would be the best piece of musical advice you would give yourself?
Practice.
Yeah.
Very basic, but yeah, I would definitely just tell myself to pull my head out of my ass and start putting in the work, because I feel like I've made the most musical progress in the last even in the last year, since I've found the group of guys that we have now. Those guys, every single one of those guys has pushed me so much, whether it's vocally, instrumentally. I like to play drums, guitar, bass, pretty much anything I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I was very, very mediocre at best when it came to any instrument. Until, like I said, about a year ago, I started to hang out with people that I looked up to musically, and that was probably the changing point for me. So I would just tell myself to practice the hell out of whatever I wanted to.
That's one of our most popular answers for sure. You definitely got to practice. You can't just go and act like you're a hot shit or act like you're a huge rock star if you don't know what you're doing. So go out there and practice, everyone. And again, this is Hailing Andromeda. Highly recommend you guys check these guys out when they get their album out. I will leave links down below for their album. I'll leave links down below right now after this podcast where you can find them and get a hold of them. I really, really think that these guys are just great guys, and everyone should give them at least a try. Give them at least a listen. If you don't like it, hey, you don't like it. But you never know. This could be your next favorite band. So this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.